Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Ghazal, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Rochester in the School of Nursing and in the Wilmot Cancer Institute at the Cancer Prevention and Control Department.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farnoosh Nik-Ahd, and I'm a sixth year resident in the Department of Urology at UCSF.
Thanks for being here. If you don't remember, about a year ago, you saw us for the International Women's Day webinar as well. We think it's important and especially fitting that we are recording this on Sunday, February 23rd, as the last Sunday of February, but it really speaks to the history of International Women's Day, that's when historically it was celebrated the most on the last Sunday of February. So even though this year it's going to be March 8th, I believe, we're here to talk about International Women's Day. And I wanted to start, Farnoosh, with just reading something that's on the International Women's Day website. And I think it's something that kind of centered me in coming to this talk. But International Women's Day is under the theme for all women and girls, rights, equality. Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge gender equality. And again, International Women's Day is powered by the collective efforts of all women. Collective action and shared ownership for driving gender parity is what makes International Women's Day impactful. And there's a quote that they have on their website from Gloria Steinem, and she says, "The story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist nor to any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights." So make International Women's Day your day and do what you can to truly make a positive difference for all women. So just wanted to set the stage. And I guess I'll just start in that reflection, which was important to me, in that in a time where there's even being language removed to how we identify women to be able to say gender equality. I think it's really important that we continue to have these discussions and just want to thank Oncology Data Advisor for having us here and and especially Kira for having International Women's Day platformed still in this way. So I'll turn it over to you.
I couldn't agree more, Lauren. And I was reflecting on this as well. And I think now more than ever, it's important to create these safe spaces where we can talk about this and also just acknowledge that, though women have certainly come a long way, there's a lot of work, perhaps now more than ever, that needs to be done. And we're just not going to get there unless we can talk about it and shed light on these issues and think about how to forge a path together forward. So I couldn't agree more, and I'm very happy to be here and to touch on, all the issues that impact us, now more than ever.
Mhm. So yeah, so let's get into it. Maybe it's a follow-up from last year, but we talked about disparities impacting women in medicine. We talked about it in nursing, where I'm coming from, in leadership and in research and in academia. And so, are there any things that you wanted to start with discussing around disparities that you've seen or experienced, or some things to bring to the forefront here?
Yeah. So for me, I'm in urology, which is a heavily male-dominated surgical subspecialty. And it's a very interesting time because, right now of the practicing urologists, it's less than 10% of them are women. But amongst the people in training to become urologists like me, it's about 30% are women. So we're definitely seeing progress in terms of the representation that we have. So it's an exciting time where, there's opportunities for women and there's opportunities to change not only how we perceive urologists, but how we perceive surgeons, and hopefully to instill in people, when they think of a surgeon, maybe they'll think of a woman too.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's, despite that progress, there's a lot of disparities that impact women. things that are just simple workplace behaviors or different interactions that can happen that disproportionately affect women more. Maybe things like different hierarchies or different dynamics that they have, different language patterns that get used. I think all the time about women apologizing a lot, often even apologizing for things that aren't even their fault or have even nothing to do with them. But just thinking about how we're so cultured to behave certain ways and how those gender norms are in place, and we have to recognize them and think about how to change some of that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that, in a surgical field, huge progress, a lot of work remains to be done. But it's great to have these platforms and great to have spaces where we can talk about these things and we can talk about how to create more equality.
Mm. I like that you brought up the apologizing because I think you can even see that disparity in faculty meetings that I'm a part of, which is, our nurse workforce, we're still at around 85% is primarily female. When you look at leadership in nursing, it's about only 25% of nursing leadership positions are held by women. So there's a big disparity in terms of entry level nurses, registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and then nurse leaders as nurse managers and chief nurse officers and executives. But the apologizing thing, um, uh, I've witnessed that a lot, even just in our faculty, of how you start, a conversation with someone or to start apologizing, and had a really great nurse mentor and researcher who was like, never start your sentences or anything with an apology. Sorry. So I've had to find a replacement or just kind of sit on my hands.
Yeah. And it's so true. I catch myself doing it, and I certainly used to do it a lot more before. And as I've gone through training, I've recognized it. And I have to make a very conscious effort sometimes to be like, wait, why am I apologizing? Or, there's no apology necessary, but it's those behaviors that are so deeply ingrained. There's a skit about this by Amy Schumer where I think it highlights it very nicely. Very relatable.
I have to watch that. I think that's a good thing just to play in the background to remind
Yeah.
yourself. And you bring up a good, I think we both kind of address this as either having mentors or women mentors or colleagues. I have a really strong group of four of us that came in as assistant professors on the tenure track, and they're my sounding board, my grounding, and kind of just always go to them with like, can I be angry as for this? Can I, and but I think that really drives home the point of the importance of allyship in women leaders in medicine and nursing and healthcare, and we talk about mentoring versus sponsoring versus, having those academic or professional coaches. But is there any story of that comes to mind when you think of people that empowered you to get where you are in your surgical field too, and in your specialty?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's all three are so important, the mentorship, the
Mhm.
allyship, and the sponsorship. And I've been very, very lucky that even since medical school, I've had really great mentors, a lot of whom are actually men. And they've just been phenomenal, very empowering, and just people that to this day are some of my closest mentors and advisors. Um, and it's made a huge impact because while, we may, look different or, have different genders or backgrounds, fundamentally having that support, especially from someone who's more senior, who's gone through the path, who can be a sounding board, offer you that really valuable advice is so critical, and has been just instrumental in shaping me, my goals, And even me wanting to be an academic urologist and someone who does research, it's all a huge testament to the quality of mentorship that I've had. I've been very lucky to have. Um, and just thinking about sponsorship, having people put your name out there so that you get those opportunities to also share your work or talk about things that matter, and how important that is. And it's important for us to do too, for the next generation so that we can carry that torch forward. And the allyship piece, I think that fundamentally, and I've been lucky to see this, there's something so powerful about women coming together to help each other and to support each other, and to really be there for one another in a way where we can understand, unique challenges that might disproportionately affect women and try to help create change, where otherwise change may not happen. So I think all three are so critical, and I can wholeheartedly say I would not be where I am had it not been, especially for that mentorship piece. And I hope to be that for the next generation. Would love to hear more about how you and how you've benefited from that.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that there's, I think a very important thing that you said is that not all of our mentors, sponsors, people in our corner are women. And I
Yeah.
think that's so important is that I think it's he for she. Is that the organization in medicine? And I've had a really great mentor who was a part of that and kind of made it, made it known during talks that they gave or even on their social media that they were he for she. And so, yeah, in nursing, I would say I definitely would not be at a point in my career without my mentors, without my sponsors, without my mentees too. I think that who are both women and men who've taught me so much and who've made me continue to ask important questions. Um, and I think too, and I look at kind of where I want my career to go and who are in those roles now, um, and whether they're women or men, what value system and kind of what is continuing to guide them. And so I've been more cognizant, I think, when I'm talking to them, whether it's a work happy hour or something, or a formal meeting of just asking of, what's continuing to drive you in this and how, especially now when folks in these leadership positions, men and women, are making extremely difficult decisions. You know, talk me through this, help me to understand, and kind of help me to amplify how difficult this is for you right now too. And so that's, I think we saw this. Uh, I think in a classic example is the all of the female deans and presidents who were ahead of the Supreme Court during the hearings, and I think that was a really important example for women in leadership positions too, to see kind of who is behind you and who is continuing to help guide and really shape your career. So that was a that's a little bit. I also know that uh, there's a lot of research being done in LGBTQ populations. There's a lot being talked about too in the media, and a lot of politics uh, around populations. I know in our own work um, at the University of Rochester too, and across the country now, there's going to be barriers with collecting data around sexual orientation and gender identity, barriers in collecting data around gender. I think just around, and I think I am very nervous about what that means for the future of these populations where there are known health and healthcare disparities. And so, I am just continuing to try to ask as a pre-tenure early career person, how are we ensuring that we still have adequate and diverse representation, even if we can't continue to collect these data? How how are we ensuring that? How are we ensuring trust within these communities that have been historically underrepresented, neglected? Um, and I really struggle with that. Um, so I don't know if you're still if you're also having these conversations in medicine and in your work too and in your research, and if there's anything there that you wanted to share.
Yeah, it's certainly scary times, and it's really hard to digest and to think about, how we can lose a lot of the progress that we've made.
Mm,
But for me, it's really highlighted the importance of being an ally for those communities and to just keep going with the work that you believe in and, for the values that you believe in.
mm,
I think it's so important that the research that we do, that, the people that we are representative of the populations that we take care of, and that we really, really work hard to be inclusive of those populations, especially women, especially minorities, people of color, people of diverse gender identities. For me, my research passion has been transgender women. So also part of International Women's Day, also a really important population to recognize. But it's hard with these threats that are being made to some of the support that helps that work. But for me, it's really just made me reflect and recommit in a lot of ways that this is the work that I want to carry forward, no matter what's happening right now. And, we're just going to keep going and we'll find whatever we need to find in terms of support to keep going with the work and to keep doing right by this population that's been so wronged historically and so neglected and marginalized. And I feel like now more than ever, you just have to be, the squeaky wheel and to just keep going. And like you're saying, keep asking those hard questions and keep trying to find answers and fight. And to, try to do what we can to help those communities and help keep those values intact.
mm.
Hard.
It's hard. And I don't think I could put that any better to end out on that note. Um, I can't remember if last year that we talked about the Lancet Commission on Women and Health, woman power and cancer. But in thinking about this talk, I just wanted to draw listeners' attention to that commission and to that report. Again, that was the Lancet, and it was really formed to address these urgent questions that were at the intersection of cancer risk and outcomes, status of women in society, and social inequalities. And so they compiled key findings, about 10 key findings, and then 10 priority actions. And so that's how I wanted to kind of wrap this up. If there was anything else, Farnoosh, that you wanted to say, um, I got turn right back over to you.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent way to end. And again, just really happy to be here and to have this space. And a huge thank you to Oncology Data Advisor. And I'm inspired by this conversation, and I hope that our listeners will be too. And to just keep going and keep doing what we believe in to try to make things better for everybody.
Hmm. Great. Thank you all. Stay safe, and healthy, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.